Thanks, everybody, for tuning into the podcast today. Again, I am Michael Monteforte. I am really excited about our guest today. I have my good friend Tom here with us. And Tom is what we call an EOS implementer. And we'll get into more detail about what that is and how that works. And he's more than just any EOS implementer. He's our EOS implementer. I speak from experience with working with Tom for as long as we have, that he's got a lot of great stuff. So this is going to be an awesome podcast today. For lack of a better term, until we get into some of the more details, what we're going to call Tom is a business coach. All right, and Tom's job as a business coach is to help businesses implement a program called EOS, which stands for Entrepreneurial Operating System, and we'll get into all that. So, Tom, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So let's just jump right into it. All right. So for now, I defined you as a business coach, and we know that there's a lot more to it than that, and we'll talk about that. But I would love to hear how you got to be a business coach. Lots of people ask me, well, why did you become a lawyer? How did you become a lawyer? And it's a question that I love to turn around and ask other people. So what got you into being a business coach and into EOS?
Well, first of all, Mike, thank you very much for having me here on the podcast. You guys, your team is so awesome. You have an awesome culture in your company, and you guys make my implementing EOS so easy. So first of all, thank you so much for that.
Wonderful.
So I am a business coach or a leadership coach, and I primarily coach the leadership teams of privately held businesses, entrepreneurial businesses. And how I got into this is that this is my passion now. So I'm kind of a serial entrepreneur or entrepreneur, you can call it either way. In my very first venture, I started out building products for the electronics industry, and the business went really well. In my second venture, I think I got overconfident and I crashed and burned, believe it or not. And I think I just tried to do too much, too fast. But like all entrepreneurs or intrapreneurs, you use that experience and learn from your lessons.
Right.
You figure out what are your strengths, and more importantly, what are your weaknesses.
Sure.
And you go from there. In my third venture, I got lucky and I teamed up with another entrepreneur. And we built a business and building engineering products, and that went off very well. And I did that for a long time. On my last venture, I teamed up with yet another entrepreneur, and that's when I saw the light. So at this place, there was no structure. Everybody was working crazy hard, and yet it was like they were not making progress. Even though everybody was working hard, nobody was making progress. And then they implemented EOS there. And once they implemented EOS there, people started to figure out what their lanes were. People, they got structure in the company. The business finally started to move. And then I decided that this is my passion. This is what I want. This was about 3 years ago. And then I decided to make EOS my passion and help all other businesses kind of get everything they want from their businesses. So that's when I decided to do EOS.
Awesome.
So I've been doing this for about 3 years now.
And from my dealings with you, I can always tell that you're passionate about it and talking about this stuff. And I think that's so important, because who's going to listen to a business coach that doesn't seem passionate about what they're doing? Plus, you being passionate about it is infectious. So it makes the rest of the team passionate about what we're doing. So why don't you explain a little bit about kind of what EOS is? For people that follow us and follow my firm, they've heard me talk about it before, but still in very general terms. So explain kind of what is EOS?
Sure. So EOS, or the Entrepreneurial Operating System, is just a set of simple, real-world practical tools that have stood the test of time for 100 years and will stand the test of time for hundreds more. So it really is that simple. So we work with business leaders, business owners, mostly of privately held companies, and we make these leaders better at three things. We call it vision, traction, healthy. Vision is about making sure that your entire company, everybody in the company, is 100% on the same page as to where you are going, and more importantly, how you're going to get there.
Right.
Traction is about making sure that we instill a sense of accountability in the whole organization, so that anywhere you turn in the company, you see people kind of working, executing on your vision. And healthy is simply making sure that everybody is working together in an open, honest, and cohesive manner.
Right.
Ultimately, the goal is to make sure that the whole company is working on one vision, kind of going in one direction, and when that happens, the company becomes more profitable, and at the end of the day, your life becomes more fun. That's what it's all about, kind of giving you that EOS life, which we say is, making your life more fun.
Right, right. And I want to get into a little bit more about how you, as an implementer, as a coach, help people to learn the system and work the system. But real quick, so the book we have in front, Traction, that is a great resource for people who want to learn a little bit more about EOS, how it works. If I'm looking for, hey, before I go and take any steps, but I want to do a little reading and learn a little more, there are several books in the series. Is that the place to start?
That's a great book to start. If you don't have the time, we say, excuse me, if you can even read the first chapter of this book, just one chapter, it'll probably take you like 15 minutes to read that.
Yeah.
If after reading the first chapter of this book, if you can find something that resonates with you, then you know that this book is for you. This is a great book by Gino Wickman. There's another book that's called What the Heck is EOS?
Yeah.
So either of those two books. There's another book that's called Rocket Fuel. Mm-hmm. So these three are from the EOS library. Just pick up any one of them. But if I had to make a recommendation, I would pick either of those two, either Traction or What the Heck is EOS. And I'm sure if you can find something that resonates with you, this is for you.
Right.
This is clearly for you.
That makes sense. Traction was the first one I read. Now, I've read all the books in the series. I've given the What the Heck is EOS out to some of my team members. My leadership team has read it because it just explains everything in a easy to understand manner. So I've read them all. I recommend them all. I started with Traction, and like you said, those two are just a great. You can find something in there. I found tons of things that resonated with me, and that was what led me to kind of take next steps and say, okay, we want to do this. This could work for us.
Yeah, and if I can just add a little bit to that, typically EOS is not for everybody. One of the things that we say that should be a great identifier is that of course the basics are, if you're like a privately held kind of entrepreneurial company, typically our sweet spot is 10 to 200 employees, but it can be lower. I have a client even with 2 employees, but they're growing, so they want to be on here.
Sure.
So and typically business owners have like one of these frustrations. They have issues with accountability, or they may have issues with losing control of the company. They may have people issues sometimes, or sometimes they're doing great, but they want to just get to the next level, or in other case, they just want to maintain their performance. In other cases, there are businesses which are maybe getting ready for sale, in which case sometimes business owners find that if the buyers know that the company is running on EOS, then the company typically sells at a higher multiplier.
Okay.
So all of these are. But the most important thing, if I had to pick like one thing which is single-handedly goes above everything, is that the leaders have to be open and honest, and most importantly, willing to be vulnerable both with themselves and with those around them.
Right.
So if there's one thing out of all of these, it would be that. The leaders have to be willing to be open, honest, and willing to be vulnerable both with themselves and with those around them.
That's not always easy.
That's not easy.
Right.
That's not easy. And that is a perfect definition of what Monteforte is. Your leaders are willing to be open, honest, and vulnerable both with themselves and with those around them. And that's what makes it easy to do EOS here.
Yeah, I think that's one of those things that at first, again, okay, being honest, but being able to be vulnerable with the rest of the team it's not an easy thing,
It's not
and
easy.
there's gotta,
Yeah.
you probably had to pull that out of me a little.
but the good thing is that once you do it, it becomes easier. It's just hard to get started, right? Once you do it, I mean, it's going to allow you to make progress much faster.
So tell me about, talking about getting started,
Yeah.
okay? So whether someone reads the book or they hear about EOS, or they're talking with other business owners that are running it, and they look at it as something that they want to implement and do. Now enter you as the EOS implementer. Where do we go from there? How does it work?
That's a great question. And so the first thing that we typically do is that if they contact me or you refer them to me, that the first thing we typically do is this thing that we call the 90-minute meeting. If you recall, we did that. We did that a long time ago.
Yeah.
So that's a meeting in which I will present EOS to you in 90 minutes. So you will get the whole shebang in a nutshell. So that we have found that that's really the easiest way to kind of compress all this information. And so by the time I'm done, you will get a total overview of it. The goal of that is to basically get us on the same page and to see if there's a fit.
Right.
Because as I said, it's not for everyone.
Sure.
And if there is a fit, then we schedule. The good thing about EOS is that there's no contracts, there's nothing to sign, there's no prepayment, nothing. Because it's just a mental commitment that you're making.
Right.
There's no paper commitment. So the only commitment that you're making is to agree to improve yourself, is to make your business better, and to strengthen what we call the 6 key components. So typically how we implement it is in the beginning there's about 2 or 3 sessions that we do over the course of 60 days, but after that it's just that we would meet once a quarter.
Right.
So there's very low overhead in the organization. There's almost very little that as an organization you have to do differently. It's mostly about creating accountability in the organization.
Right.
So if I had to pick one word as a watchword that over and about traction, it would be accountability.
Right. And that was something that we worked hard on during our sessions with you as well. So after that 90-minute, we talk about, like you said, is there a fit? Is this going to work for us? Is it something that we want to do? And if the answer is okay, yes, what's next after that?
So after that, we would schedule the next session, which is typically a full day session around 7 hours, plus or minus an hour, and that's what we call the focus day. So at this focus day, we would start teaching you the basic kind of traction tools. Those are the foundational tools of traction, which is what the book is all about.
Yeah.
In EOS, we say vision without traction is hallucination. So we always start with traction first, because we want to make sure that before we start getting into vision, we want to make sure that there's accountability in the organization. So people are taking ownership for things. In EOS, we say everybody has a number.
Right.
And if you don't have a number, then chances are your number is 4 o'clock, and that's the number on the clock that you're getting ready to head home. So we kind of create that accountability right from the get-go.
Right.
So within 60 days of starting, you kind of, you've already mastered all the traction tools,
Right.
and you've already created the vision. So that's step 1. Is after the 90-minute meeting is the focus day, and after that we schedule 2 more sessions that we call Vision Building Day 1 and Vision Building Day 2.
Yep.
Again, these are full day sessions. At Vision Building Day 1, we will start the process of building your vision. Again, it's not something I'm doing. You folks, the team is doing it. And so when the team does it together, you have buy-in together,
Right.
and you're building it together. And so that's Vision Building Day 1. In Vision Building Day 2, we actually chart out, kind of map out how you're going to execute the vision.
Right.
So, it's one thing to build a vision, but it's quite another to execute it. So, and during the whole process, all the time, we will keep smoking out all the issues, anything that's going to come in the way between you making the vision and executing it, so that you are 100% confident when you leave the room, nothing's going to come in the way of executing on your vision.
Right. And I remember from the sessions that we did, one of the things that we focused on, and I know that it sounds like it's a long session because it's a full day, but Tom brings snacks, and it goes by fast.
Yes, there's nothing worse than a hungry student.
Right. But we worked on core values. We spent a lot of time talking about our company and what are our core values, what do we want them to be, and kind of fleshing them out and figuring out what those values are, and that was huge for us. And you're talking about accountability and creating an accountability chart for the organization where we're being clear about what everyone's supposed to be doing and really what everyone's jobs are and responsibilities are. Were just amazing tools to really help us get organized and move forward. So I found the sessions to be just invaluable. The core value one particularly.
Yeah, and you bring up a bunch of good points. I almost don't know where to start from. And so in the focus day session, we teach you 5 things. First one, many businesses often get stuck. They're doing their best, but they don't seem to be able to get unstuck. So we will teach you 5 leadership skills which are going to allow you to break through every time that happens. Number 2, we will set the accountability chart in an organization.
Right.
Now this is very critical because many times in a business, the almost the single most thing a leader can provide, a business owner can provide his or her organization is crystal clear alignment and accountability, so that everybody in the company knows what their role is. Right. So that different people aren't trying to do different things, because you waste a lot of time and money when it's not clear what people's roles are.
Sure.
And once you give people that clear accountability, it is so empowering for people, because now it's their baby. They can take that baby and kind of run with it and make it grow and prosper. Right. So accountability is super important. And number 3, we will create rocks for the organization. Now I bet your listeners are wondering what rocks are. Rocks are 90-day priorities. So in US we say that most human beings kind of lose track of stuff after 90 days. Right. There's only, our attention span is typically around 90 days. So we will set priorities so that every 90 days, everybody in the company, absolutely every single person in the company has at least one rock. Right. Which means every person in the company has, at any given point, knows what's expected of them in those 90 days. And in those 90 days, we will set actually 2 types of rocks for the whole company, yeah, and rocks for you individually as a leadership team. Right. And of course, everybody in the company. And then we will show you something else, that I'll teach you a thing that we call the level 10 meeting pulse. Yeah. The meeting pulse is a team meeting, which is the only meeting that you need to have in your company. Very often in companies, it can go either way. People spend a lot of time in meetings which often employees find not so productive. Right. Because they find people are just kind of chit-chatting, or on the other hand, it's not productive. Sure. It's not effective. So the level 10 meeting is an amazing tool which allows you to, in a very short amount of time, in a very effective and efficient manner, allows you to gain traction. In this meeting, you are checking your company's numbers, your scorecard. Yeah. We are checking to make sure that your rocks are on track. We are making sure that you see if there's any issues with your customers or with your employees. Yeah. So everything is covered in this thing. Then you make sure that the previous week's action items are taken care of. It's a very efficient meeting. And then at the end of the session, we will also show you how to make that scorecard so that every employee in the organization is accountable for at least one number. Right. As a leadership team, you're probably accountable for more. Sure. But everybody's accountable for at least one.
Yeah, and you mentioned the L10 meeting. So, We've been doing the L10 meeting for a while. It's once a week. It's at the same day and time every week. We do ours on Fridays, so it's every Friday morning. And the other thing about it is I don't run that meeting. Nicole runs that meeting. So it doesn't have to be the business owner that runs the meeting. In fact, I tend to be the one that talks too much. So if I were running the meeting, I would get less done. So Nicole runs the meeting, and she keeps me on track. So if I start talking too much or going off on a tangent, she brings me back in and refocuses us on the issues that we're trying to solve. And it's a game changer. So one of the things that I like about the Level 10 is it makes it impossible to hide from your numbers. You have to confront your numbers in that meeting. So if for the previous week revenue wasn't where it's supposed to be, you can't just sit back and pretend that it didn't happen. You have to discuss and diagnose, and it helps you to solve those problems before they get worse.
Once again, you brought up so many points there. They are all wonderful. And so number one is accountability. So every week when you are sitting at the same table, kind of eyeball to eyeball, it's very difficult for any of us to come each week and say, well, I'm sorry, the dog ate my homework or this or that. So it just becomes very uncomfortable. So human beings, like, we are going to self-select. Like, we are going to decide, no, I can't do this. Either I can't do this is not for me, or I better up my game.
Right.
I better up my game. And we are almost always going to pick, we want to up our game.
Right.
Because we want to be recognized as doing a great job for the company. Yeah. And the other thing is, like I always say, one of my favorite things is that, and so when you are at the meeting and you are reviewing the scorecard as leaders, you have to ask yourself, do you want to be monitoring for success or monitoring for neglect?
Right.
So when you are reviewing the scorecard and asking people if they are on track for their scorecard, and if week after week you see off track, you're basically monitoring neglect.
Sure.
Which, as a leader, that's the last thing you want to do.
Right. But finding out something is off track, and if it's off track even more than once, it's also a good way to ask for help. Absolutely.
And so, again, you bring up two things. A, there is no shame, because this is a team process.
Right.
So if there's a problem, it's not your problem, it's the team's problem. And B, as you said, this is a way to root cause the problem. So and so we have a tool that we call IDS. It stands for Identify, Discuss, and Solve. It's a very simple tool which allows you to solve any problem from its root cause.
Right.
So we typically ask the question why like 5 times. You don't have to ask it 5 times, but usually if you ask why 3, 4, 5 times, you will get to the root cause of why. Because sometimes when if you look at it at the surface, you may be solving the wrong problem.
Sure.
Or you may not really be getting to the root of it. But your point is very correct, that any issue that happens, as a team, you discuss it and solve it from its root cause, so that it does not come back and harm you, the long time. And as you said, because of the issues list, it's impossible, and it's empowering almost for employees to bring up any issues, because they know this is not going to be shoved under the rug.
Right.
It's always in the daylight. It's always in the daylight, and the problem is going to be solved, and then you move on.
Right. And we found even other ways. We have our leadership L10 meeting on Friday, but we have a case status meeting once a week, and we've started running that like an L10 meeting as well, and just using that IDS method of identify, discuss, solve to fix issues with individual client cases and case files when we get stuck on something. And running that meeting like an L10 meeting has just made it more efficient. They don't take as long, and we're getting problem solved faster.
That's great. And one of the things that we say in EOS is that we don't do anything by theory. Everything is practice.
Right.
So if I have an idea about something, I'm not going to suggest that to you. We only tell you things that we know have worked for a fact. We are all about practice and not about theory.
Right.
And that's why we are so confident in what we do, because this is a proven process. We don't try to change anything. We don't try to kind of modify it just because you're a law firm or another client is an engineering firm or a landscape. It's exactly the same because we know it works.
Right.
We know it works, and so we don't need to fix it.
Right.
So if it ain't broken, they don't fix it.
These business principles apply
to any business,
regardless of what the
exactly.
type of business is.
Exactly,
You know?
exactly. These are kind of age-old practices which really have stood the test of time.
Yeah, I have found just the entire process to be hugely helpful for us. I'm a big fan of the system. I'd recommend it to anybody that runs a business. It's just the difference is night and day. I feel like from prior to starting EOS to where we are now.
And it's so simple.
Right?
Yeah, it's so simple. In fact, I think the greatest strength of EOS is its simplicity. People often ask me, like, how come it's so simple? And I answer, the fact that it's so simple is probably why it works so well. Because if anything is too complicated, the people already have enough on their plates.
Right.
So the last thing they want is to have to learn something new. Here, you don't really have to learn anything new. You just come and do your daily work and go. That's all. There's no additional overhead. There's nothing new to learn. You know, it's that simple.
And if it had been hugely difficult to implement, exactly, that might have been a barrier for us. But it's not. It's surprisingly simple and straightforward.
Exactly, yeah.
So if we've got somebody that's ready, you mentioned that 90-minute is usually the way to start that 90-minute meeting. So if we've got someone that kind of wants to take that next step, how do they go about doing that and setting up that 90-minute and seeing about whether there's a fit there?
There's a bunch of ways that they could try to reach me. They could go to our EOS Worldwide website and look for my name there, Thomas Puthanangady, or they could email me. It's a long email, so I don't know whether I should spell it out. Or they could call me on my cell phone number. So there's three options. Or they could go to my LinkedIn page, Thomas Puthanangady on LinkedIn.
Yep.
So there's all kinds of ways. That I'm happy to put that somewhere.
We'll put them up on the screen as well for people that are watching. But you know what? As far as for anybody that wants to call, give the number.
Yeah, my cell number is 508-667-5036. I'll repeat that: 508-667-5036.
Okay, perfect. And we'll make sure that information's on the video screen as well for people that want to email.
Yeah, that's perfect.
And I highly recommend Tom and what he does. He's been a huge help to us. He's been a huge asset for us. The system, I mean, it works. It does. It's something that if I have any regrets about it, it's not starting it sooner. And being in business for as long as I have without starting the process. So if anybody has questions about EOS and wants to talk to me about it and wants to get the perspective of someone that's been through the process as a business owner, I'm happy to talk about it. But I highly recommend it. I highly recommend Tom and what he does. So if you're thinking about it, schedule the 90-minute. It's well worth it. Even just that short meeting is eye-opening. I found it to be so.
Thank you so much, Mike, and appreciate this opportunity to make this presentation to your team and to everybody else who's listening.
Oh, so happy to have you on. Like I said, you made a raving fan of me, both of you and of the system. So to be able to share this with our clients and our other business colleagues that run businesses and are looking for ways to improve, it's invaluable. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much.
All right, I appreciate it, my friend.
Thank you.